And good evening and welcome to the 5280 podcast. Tonight I'm Glenn Hauser, manning the host duties. We're joined by Cameron Parker and our own Bronco Bill, repping the Cubs, Avs, and the Broncos all in one fell swoop here. Gage
my three
and
favorite
Mike.
teams. What can I say?
There you go. Where's the Chargers? I'm looking for that.
No.
Gage and Mike, unfortunately, their power rankings are not good. Both of them are having issues with Mike with some possible tornadoes and Gage with some wind issues in Colorado. So it's going to be these three amigos for tonight. Fellas, how you doing?
You're doing well. We are inching ever so closer to the draft. And scraping a little bit, obviously, of course, finding content, and we'll certainly talk about, possibly a certain topic related to the draft here later on in the show.
Yeah, I'm doing fine. Got a call from Mike about 4:15 my time, and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm smoking some ribs and a potato." And he goes, "Can you be on the show?" I'm like, "Okay." So if I have to jet out of here because my barbecue blew up, you'll know what happened. But now I'm doing good.
So, like I was saying prior to going on the air, I think that's best case scenario. If your ribs are like engulfed in flames, and let's put it into perspective, 4:15 Bill's time is only like 45 minutes ago, so he really is stepping into short notice duty. But I think we really need to start out tonight with the Courtland Sutton news that we got earlier from Tom Pelissaro, and looks like Courtland is not joining the voluntary workouts, is holding out. I know some people on Twitter are saying that's not a big deal because they are voluntary, but it sounds like some heels are being dug in. A new contract is being expected, and I don't think it's going to go Courtland's way as far as continuing a Bronco. What do you guys think?
It's such a hard thing to try and put your Sherlock Holmes, hat on and try and decipher this any way or another. But like for me, obviously it centers around the voluntary mini camp, which actually just kicked off this week. But it's so hard for me because it's like the timing of it. You cannot have scripted the worst possible timing of Sutton actually not, being there for the voluntary workout. We should actually preface this in the sense of, yeah, it is definitely a voluntary workout, but you know what? Guess who did show up? To the voluntary workout? None other than left tackle Garrett Bowles, who has been subject to trade rumors also the last couple of years. He showed up to the voluntary workout, and frankly, he actually has $0 in guaranteed money, if I'm not mistaken. And whereas Courtland Sutton, he has $2 million in guaranteed money. So, if you will, roughly the same kind of deal that's going on with Garrett Bowles and Courtland Sutton. Two guys that we have prefaced numerous times, Glenn, on the show that are subject to trade rumors, possibly could even be on the move. The timing is just not the best, personally, for me, like if I'm Courtland Sutton. And I understand possibly him asking for a new deal. Does he get it? I don't know. It's really hard to say. But, man, you could not have scripted the worst timing, in my honest opinion, for Sutton.
In my opinion, Courtland Sutton's upset. I think Courtland is upset because he had his best career last year in magnificent touchdown catches. Sure, he was put in situations that he shouldn't have to have been in, but he made those receptions count in touchdowns and receptions and whatnot with Russell Wilson. I also feel he's a little bit upset because Jerry Jeudy's gone. I mean, I don't know if that was a dynamic in the locker room. I'm not sure, but seeing Jerry Jeudy gone, seeing Justin Simmons gone, I mean, I'm wondering if he's starting to see the writing on the wall and doesn't like it. And that to me is what scares me. Because we lose Courtland Sutton. I mean, he was fantastic last year. I have no idea how we replace him, seriously, with that kind of production.
See, I think it does relate to Jerry Jeudy, Bill, but not in the way you're suggesting. I think the fact that Judy got such a huge contract from the Browns when his statistics weren't really jaw dropping as far as with his time with the Broncos. But honestly, and I mean, I've got Courtland's jersey hanging behind me. You know, I've been a fan for a long time, but I think it's it's time to just cut the cord. Let's include him in some sort of, trade package. Really get anything. You know, we're trying to make something happen here, and if someone doesn't want to be here, sayonara. You know what I'm saying?
Who do we get for Courtland Sutton? That's my point.
Well, fourth or fifth. I mean, then maybe you could package it to move up for a third round pick. The point is from my standpoint is he's been paid over $40 million for 6 years as a Bronco, right? And he's slated to get 13.6 this year and another 14 the following year. He has 1,000 yards, and this is not, and I'm not here to just bash the guy, but if he's not going to show up, you know, when you're a team that hasn't made the playoffs, veteran leaderships, captains should be expected to be showing up. He had 1,000 yard season. He did have that ACL injury back in 20. In this day and age, 17 game season, you need 59 yards to surpass 1,000 yards. 59 yards a game. He had 700.
Hang on a second, but isn't that because he's not getting the ball? I mean, Russell Wilson was running for his life and couldn't get it to him.
Yeah, but he did score 10 touchdowns last year. He had 59 receptions, 772 yards receiving. He was one of the league leaders in drop passes. I think he was in the top 5 in drop passes in the NFL. I mean, like, talk about having an overinflated opinion of who you are as a player when you're still making 13.6, you know?
Yeah.
So, well, Cam, what's your thoughts here?
Well, and even then, for a little pushback, you know, Bill, like Courtland was their offense. I mean, you know, like if they're, but no, I'm actually saying, like, you know, when you say, well, getting the ball, he was the offense, so he was getting the ball, and so I mean, like, he was the, you know, people joked about it in the sense of, like, you know, oh, Russ, you know, Courtland's down there somewhere, like. There was a reason why people were saying that, and that was because Courtland was the guy, you know, that Russ would rely on to, and so he became their number one wide receiver. But the thing is like, I do think he's a great wide receiver. Like let's not get it twisted. I do think he's a great wide receiver, but with the production that he has unfortunately been having this year, you can very easily replace it with someone else. And you can when you look at what he's been able to do, and yeah, I think there's a definite argument to be made that he's been quarterback proof over the course of his career with the Broncos. I still think that if you look at it and then over the course of his years, you can replace it with a draft pick or two this year in the upcoming draft, and that is something that Glenn and I and Mike and Gage have had this conversation before. It's just the unfortunate nature of this is that in this class and where things are currently sitting, the two positions, it's crazy how this worked out. The two positions they could move on from and upgrade in this draft class is offensive tackle, Garrett Bowles is on the block, right? And wide receiver with Courtland Sutton. And the fact that, again, the timing of this, you know, and when you look at some of these prospects in this class, and especially, you know, you even hate to go down this road too, as far as with it too, but like, if there are players that don't want to be a part of this team, like then they really should not be on this team. Like, they really should not be on this football team anymore. Because at this point, we're ushering in a new era. We're ushering in this new culture that is being, you know, built by Sean Payton and the Penner Group, and even George Payton to a degree. Like, we're building a new culture right now. And if players specifically like Courtland Sutton are not buying into that as a captain, as a leader, I'm sorry, but it truly is time to move on from you.
It's so hard for me, Cam, being a fan, to want to see somebody like Courtland Sutton go to another team and light it up like we had last year. I mean, that would just that to me is just not what I want to see. And you're saying, okay, it's time to move on, and it's time to rebuild. But rebuilding is what, 2 or 3 years? Is Sean Payton going to be around for that? I don't think so. He's only got a 5-year contract. Got 4 years left.
That's meaningless to me. His 5-year contract is meaningless to me.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think
wow.
When we talk about rebuilding, like we're the people that are including when I first heard it, I was like, I'm not ready to, I love Courtland, but we're kind of blinded a little bit by these highlight catches, because in actuality, the regular nuts and bolts of how he played receiver last year was just average. I mean, he gets 0 yards after the catch, essentially. I mean, his ranking is just horrendously bad in the NFL with that. He had 3 fumbles, which ranked him second in the in the wide receivers for the number of fumbles. Like I said, he dropped more passes than Jerry Jeudy, even though Jeudy is talked about with that. It just I know we're trying to shy away from calling it a rebuild, and I do think that there are a lot of good pieces in this, and the coaches, I think, have a plan. But we can't have a guy in the locker room, especially with a C on his chest, that's a malcontent. You gotta clear him out for whatever you can get for him at this point. And quite honestly, the wide receiver position, it's not going to be just this draft that's going to be strong with that. It's going to be a position that going down, you might not see some of these guys getting these giant contracts that they've been getting, because they can be replaced. You could possibly get 2 $15 million receivers, or 3 $10 million receivers instead of a $30 million guy. And I mean, we've got Marvin Mims, we got Tim Patrick coming back. We have a lot of young guys that really could stand up and have solid seasons, and I'm not really afraid of it.
Let me ask you, Cam, real quick. Glenn, real quick. You mentioned that you're not really high on Courtland Sutton. I'm not talking about contracts. What I'm talking about is, and you mentioned, well, he wasn't good in everyday, catches or whatever, but he was solid in the amazing catches. My question to you is, would you rather replace him with somebody else who doesn't make those catches, who doesn't win those games in critical situations? We don't know what this new year is going to bring. We don't know what quarterback we're going to have. Right now we have Stidham, but what I'm saying is, are you willing, put it this way, are you willing to replace those critical touchdown passes, Minnesota, Buffalo, those wins, and say, okay, I'd rather take a loss?
Go ahead, Cam, because I don't think we're guaranteed taking a loss. And quite honestly, the Buffalo catch was incredible. The Buffalo pass was even better than the catch. And
right.
Everyone wants to crap on Russ all the time, but that was pretty spectacular getting it there. And Court made an incredible play, and it will be something that we'll be seeing 10 years from now. We'll still see that. But it's about having everybody on the bus. Everybody moving forward, and you can't have, I know I keep saying it, but a captain. That bothers me the most about this is that he's had all off season. He got his $2 million that the Broncos, they didn't get rid of him before he got that. But Cam actually sent us a tweet in our chat that you might want to bring up, that Chris Thomason put out there.
Yeah, I mean, the craziest thing is that there is actually a scenario out there that they may not even get something for Courtland Sutton and just cut him outright. And the reason is because of that $2 million guaranteed. And so if they cut him and he ends up signing with another football team, they will get reimbursed that $2 million in guaranteed, meaning that gets added to their cap space that they desperately need, right? That they desperately need, and then they could possibly even roll into next year, which is another separate point in a conversation we even had on 5280 last week, is that they can still punt on wide receiver possibly this year and bring in a wide receiver one next year. So the conversation of even, with Courtland Sutton can very easily be replaced in 2 years' time, right? Like it possibly even be replaced in 2 years' time with that. And so, and to Bill, like, obviously we do fall in love with the flashy, plays, and you described that. I mean, there's a reason why in so many sports, today people fall in love with the 3-pointer, people fall in love with the home run, people fall in love with hole-in-ones, people fall in love with, those 50, 60-foot putts. People fall in love with the big, bomb throws from quarterbacks, or the 65-yard runs from quarterback or from running backs, or, it's just those 50-50 balls that are won by a wide receiver. Now, why do I say a 50-50 ball, Bill? Because there's a reason why they call it a 50-50 ball, because 50-50, it either goes to the wide receiver or it goes to the defensive back, meaning you're talking about a very unpredictable situation, an unpredictable scenario where are you going to be banking on that nearly every single time that they're going to be winning 50-50 balls? No, absolutely not. Even if Courtland has been rather regular at that, I would much rather have a guy who's going to be winning between the 20s and winning, those 50-50 balls on a very consistent basis. And more importantly, a player who is bought into Sean Payton's system. And you do have a lot of players in this class that are exactly those kind of wide receivers, guys like Malachi Corley, Brendan Rice, maybe to a certain degree, Javon Baker, possibly even a Keon Coleman, right? There are big-bodied wide receivers you can add in this class, and again, there's a reason why people do qualify it as a very deep wide receiving class, right? Luke McCaffrey is another person that people even feel like could even replace Courtland Sutton. A guy who is very raw at the wide receiver position and catch it at the catch point. So and to a certain degree, like maybe instead of kind of harping on Courtland to a certain degree, I do think he deserves money in terms of the echelon of players that, are making really good deals right now. I kind of think back to when Christian Kirk made that ridiculous deal with Jacksonville, which was like the $20 million, per year. So I understand it from his standpoint in the sense of like, well, Christian Kirk made 20-some million a year. And, some of these other wide receivers are making well more than me, and he did have, and let's be completely honest, he did have maybe his best season of his career last year. So, I do think that there's levels to it that maybe he deserves maybe a little bit of a bump in pay raise, right? Based on what the market has been saying. But the idea that, truly, and I believe it was Sports Nonsense and Whiskey that chimed in the chat, like, there's no way he's worth 15 to 20 million, but I think that the market is somewhat dictating that. And so I can understand why, a guy like Courtland would feel the way that he would.
Okay. All right. I'll give you that. I don't know. I don't like the fact that we're getting rid of quality players, and I understand it's a rebuild. Nobody wants to talk about, but it is a rebuild Broncos team. And I don't know. I don't, I was so enthusiastic last year when we got Sean Payton. I thought for sure, okay, this is going to be the guy. And then it didn't work out. And now we're getting rid of this piece, that piece, this guy go Josie Jewell's gone. Jerry Judy's gone. Justin Simmons is gone. It's like, this is not the Broncos team that I'm used to. This is not what I envisioned.
Well, and we've had this conversation, I feel like, a few times, but it still bears, repeating is, the fact that it's just the nature of where sports is, unfortunately, Bill. Loyalty just doesn't happen nearly as much as it probably should anymore. Look, I have Justin Simmons jersey behind me, and I'm a big Justin Simmons fan. Everybody knows this. He's my favorite Bronco of all time. Wanted him to retire as a Bronco. But at some point, you absolutely have to have those hard conversations, right? And when you are financially strapped, you hate to say it, but because of that Russell Wilson contract, there's a reason why we're also having this conversation. And I think that when you look at it from the simple point of, the financial strap of it too. The Broncos are in just a rebuild of not just for players possibly, but also money. They want to rebuild as much money as they can. And, and so you want to make sure that you are financially stable, going forward. And as Moose River Hummer comments down below there.
Mhm.
Couldn't the Broncos have cut somebody else but Simmons? Seriously.
Again,
that's the one that hurts for us, man.
Yeah.
I still haven't figured out exactly what the motive was with that.
I think it's financials, but
Yeah.
14 million. You can't find that in Garrett Bowles or somebody else. I mean, Garrett Bowles wasn't on the same level as a Justin Simmons when it comes to production.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about positional value, I love Simmons, but if you're talking positional value, I would probably go lean maybe with their left tackle. If you're going with a quarterback.
I know
right?
you need to protect the quarterback. I'm not saying you don't. But if you don't have a solid, strong safety as like a Justin, when Justin Simmons is on that side and you've got PS2 on the other side, you ain't worrying about nothing. Seriously, you're not really worrying about a whole lot. So now we're going to leave it in the hands of KJ Stearns. I mean, he's a good safety, but I mean, Caden's
PJ Locke.
Yeah, PJ Locke. That's what I meant. Whatever. I get my words twisted.
Howard Stern.
Yeah. But you see what I'm saying, guys? I mean, are we really putting that level at the same as Justin Simmons? And then now there's talk about PS2 maybe being in a package to move up to number 4 in the draft. Who the hell wants that? I sure don't.
I don't buy that though. But again, if you're having a conversation, you would almost have to include him. But that's a conversation for another story.
No.
Well, he's certainly the teams are certainly going to ask for him, and whether the Broncos decide that they're going to go in that direction. I mean, Albright is been consistent in saying that there's zero chance that the Broncos are including Patrick Surtain in any sort of deal like that. I did want to point out one thing.
Did you see that? Hold on. Did you see that? I'd rather have Simmons back than Courtland Sutton. Absolutely.
I think it's 100% like Broncos country. But so we're going to get on to the main topic of the show. But I have the list of all the draftees, year by year in front of me here, and just looking at if in the event Courtland Sutton is gone. The Broncos will have one player combined from the 2018, 19, and 2020 drafts still on the roster.
Who's that?
Who would you guess?
Bowles?
No, he was 17.
He was 17.
And in fact, we almost lost this guy in the offseason and ended up retaining him.
Almost lost him. Okay, offense or defense?
Cam's going to get it. I can see it.
Offense or defense?
Defense.
2018 to 2020.
Yep.
Defense almost lost
him.
Justin Strnad.
Who?
He will be the one if Courtland is gone. There will be one player left in that 3-year range, and it's Justin Strnad. He almost was on the Carolina Panthers. Wow.
Yeah,
that's a crazy stat. I just happened to
notice.
That is crazy.
That's crazy.
You're gonna have to. You should tweet that actually.
That's wild.
Yeah. That is absolutely crazy.
Okay, so you're talking about the greatest draft picks of all time as a topic, correct?
In greatest Bronco draft choices.
Okay, now are we talking productivity? Are we talking draft selection?
It's all
overall.
Bill, it's all subjective.
Okay.
So we may also be talking about where you have a guy that I would agree with, and then I have to come up with somebody else to keep the topic going.
All right.
To be a contrarian, if you will, yeah.
All of you guys know I'm wearing 58. Now, the reason why I say Von Miller is this. I'm not taking anything away from Terrell Davis. None whatsoever. Terrell Davis was amazing running back. He was drafted in the 6th round, correct? Or 7th?
Terrell
was, I think,
sixth round.
Okay. Von Miller drafted in the 1st round. So reason why I say Von Miller is this. When you're drafted in the 1st round, you're expected to be elite. You're not expected to be elite in the 6th round. So therefore, Terrell Davis, in my opinion, was the greatest late round draft pick by the Broncos, and almost didn't make it if it wasn't for that preseason game in Tokyo or wherever it was with San Francisco, where he made that hard hit on that punt returner, kick returner that solidified him into the NFL. Von Miller was always expected. Did Terrell Davis single-handedly win the Broncos Super Bowl 32? Absolutely. Did Von Miller single-handedly win Super Bowl 50 against the Carolina Panthers? Absolutely. So in my opinion, this may shock you, but in my opinion, I have Von Miller, Terrell Davis tied as the best draft picks of the Broncos.
Okay, so now you just wiped out 2 of them? What kind of guess is this?
No, but I'm serious. I mean, how can you they're both the same, right? If you look at it, they both did phenomenal things nobody expected. I mean, did anybody really expect Von Miller to do what he did in the NFL when he came in? I mean, just literally run over offensive linemen like he did.
Well, like sports nonsense and whiskey. Yeah. I mean, I think when you draft a guy second and you're not necessarily used to drafting that high, even though the Broncos have had that and subsequently had a few other times in the top 10.
Yeah.
I think that you do have expectations that the guy's going to be spectacular.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well, now if you guys would like, I'll go right down the hall real quick and put on my Terrell Davis one and make you guys happy.
Well, I mean that's the reason why they quantify 1st round draft picks, right? It's like not only a starter, but if you kind of go within maybe top 10 pick, they really expect you to be a perennial Pro Bowler or even Hall of Famer, necessarily. So I really think that's a fair qualification. And I mean, and it's fair. I don't think there is a wrong answer, by any means. I mean, unless you just for some happenstance, fall on your head and you choose like Sylvester Williams or something, or like a Robert Ayers or Jarvis Moss or something like that, or maybe even a Paxton Lynch, and you just, and just slips off your head, So, but no, I really don't think that there is a wrong answer on some of these, because like there's just so many to choose from, and I think for me, I really don't necessarily consider it to be, and you probably went with Von Miller, you went with the guy that probably all of us were probably going to go with, I feel like, or maybe one of them, but. Man, I am actually gonna go with I'm gonna go with I will go with Shannon Sharp. I will go with Shannon.
Shannon Sharp's a good one too. I'll tell you what. How about that catch in Pittsburgh in that pivotal playoff game where he catches it on his shoulder and comes down with it, and Broncos end up winning that game against Pittsburgh. Man, I'll never forget that.
But that one kind of rolled off the tongue. I mean, because you do have so many other players, I mean, I easily could have chosen, this is actually kind of fun as a factoid, but like the draft pick just before him was arguably, the best safety in Broncos history, which would be Steve Atwater. And I think what's so awesome for a guy like a Shannon Sharp is that's when you truly get into the territory. You talked about it with Terrell Davis, but a 7th round draft pick from Savannah State, a nobody school. That's what makes it so fun. Jerry Rice was almost the same way, right? Or the same way, right? Like he came from a historical black college.
Mississippi Valley State.
Yeah, he comes from a historical black college and it becomes the greatest wide receiver, in NFL history. And Shannon Sharp, he's regarded by a decent amount of people as maybe the greatest tight end in NFL history.
Well, can I add Rod Smith, who was not even drafted and was a phenomenal. I mean, I know we're talking about the greatest draft pick, but Rod Smith, I mean, not even drafted, a walk-on, and the guy just phenomenal.
Yeah, but I mean, like, what made him so amazing for a guy like Shannon Sharp was, we're not talking about the tight ends now. Like in today's NFL, where they're 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", just a physical presence that can just bowl you and not just run blocking, but after the catch. No, this is Shannon Sharp, a guy who was a little bit less than 6'3", but could run block, could actually pass block in certain situations, and also have some run after the catch. He was a physical specimen, and there was a reason why there was a very tough conversation, even in division, of who was the best, tight end of all time in that era, with guys like Tony Gonzalez and Shannon Sharp. Like, there was a reason why, to a degree, it made it so hard at times for some people because of how unique and different they were, at the respective positions. And so, like, Shannon, and of course, with Shannon, he was a personality. Like, he was a bit of a player, kind of. If you were to insert
we are
him,
killing the Patriots.
Call out the National Guard. Yeah, exactly.
Right. He actually would be a player that if you put him into this particular era, he actually might thrive because of the fact that he's a talker. He's an initiator. So I think that it makes it certainly a fun conversation for sure to kind of get a chance to talk about some of these great.
I like that one. Steve Watson took some hard hits on the sideline. I watched some old Broncos games on YouTube from time to time, and Steve Watson would take some shoulder hits that would just be vicious. I mean, today that'd probably be a personal foul, but not back in the day. And yet the guy was spectacular. Yeah, there are a lot of Bronco greats, man. A lot of Bronco greats. How about the three amigos?
Bill, I got to step in because Steve Watson, and I don't know if Ray knows this, is my all-time favorite NFL player.
Roy.
I have a wall. You can't see it here. Maybe I'll configure myself next week. I have a wall that's completely Steve Watson.
So let me ask you a question real quick. Sorry, Cam, if you have anything to say, but I just want to jump in. What makes you really gravitate to Steve Watson? What was it about him?
So the thing about Watson, and he actually was not drafted. He was an undrafted free agent out of Temple back in 1979. The thing I loved about him was he certainly paid his dues, but once he got his chance, the guy caught everything, and he was sneaky fast. He was extremely reliable. When he first got there, he was a big target for Craig Morton, and he was a target for Steve DeBerg, and then he was really John Elway's first trusted target. And the guy was just so underrated. I mean, the fact that he's not in the Broncos Ring of Fame, this is like something that I've tried to figure out a way to really campaign for him, because I think he certainly deserves it, as well as some of the other guys like O'Reilly Odoms, Reuben Carter, guys that aren't in there. But Watson he led the AFC in receiving one year. There was a stretch for over 3 seasons where he was amongst the top 3 wide receivers in the entire NFL. I think the others were like James Lofton and Steve Largent at the time. I mean, so he was way up there. 13 touchdowns back in 1981. Just the guy was a phenomenal player. So for him to get recognized here by Ray, I appreciate that. I've got a rookie jersey. I've got a helmet of his. I just absolutely anything Steve Watson. I try.
Could it be because Steve Watson played when the Broncos weren't really relevant? I mean, they were relevant. I mean, they would make the division and playoffs and stuff, but they really didn't go deep. Would that be a significance? Probably.
I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think it just has to do with, I mean, if anyone we're soiling a tribute to Steve Watson with this garbage. I thought you had no power.
That's right.
Come on.
He's on battery.
He's on battery.
Airplane
He's
mode.
on something. He's on something.
Airplane
Hey, Big
mode.
E, how are you?
Something.
But watch Watson's highlights. Like the guy literally spectacular plays.
Sure.
Mile High Memories does a lot of. It's a great follow on Twitter, and Watson's in a lot of those videos.
Yeah.
So, I would say if you get a chance to Google for highlights for Steve Watson, take a look at it, and you'll see that this guy really was. I mean, he was 6'4", caught everything, took a licking. I mean, he ended up breaking 6 ribs against the Raiders in a Monday night game, and he was really never the same after that. But the guy was he was tough as nails and so reliable.
Yep. I mean, same with Ed McCaffrey, wide receiver.
Yes, he took a lot of hits.
Oh yeah, he took a lot of hits. I just, you go back and look at some of these old, and I don't mean old as an age, but years. So many players, you've got Champ Bailey, you have Steve Atwater, you have Dennis Smith. Just these guys, you go back and say, why are they not in the Hall of Fame? Why are these guys not in the Ring of Fame? I mean, I know a lot of them are, but I'm just saying, throwing out there. I mean, it's tremendous amount of legacy that this Broncos team has. And what bothers me is we don't seem to be carrying that into the years that we have now. Doesn't seem like I have that legacy. There's not really a connection with, oh, this guy's great, or this guy. I mean, we do with PS2. We thought we did with Justin Simmons, but let me ask you both you guys, going back to Justin Simmons. Do you think in the end he will retire as a Denver Bronco?
Oh, 1,000%. Oh yeah, 1,000%. His family still lives here. I actually know that for a fact. His family still lives here. I think actually his entire family, lives here except for his brother. But he loves it in Colorado. I think that he's going to be waiting, until after the draft, maybe even closer to training camp before he signs. Be kind of curious to see what he does there. But speaking of Justin Simmons, though, we at least have to give him here's a guy. Now here's a guy. But
WrestleMania.
But I think that when you look at from Justin Simmons, he absolutely deserves so much consideration. I feel like for him even being considered maybe the greatest draft pick in Broncos history. And you don't even have to look no further than just the overall draft class that he was a part of, right?
Yep. Wrong post.
But I mean, and the reason why I say that is because he was drafted in 2016. He was drafted in 2016. What famous player drove that entire draft class in 2016? Paxton Lynch, who ended up becoming the best player of that entire class in 2016. It was Justin Simmons. And he became the player that is arguably the greatest safety. He became the guy that was like maybe the greatest safety right next to a guy like a Steve Atwater and a Dennis Smith, and he embodied everything that it meant to be a Denver Bronco. It's one of the reasons why, I have his jersey behind me. He's my favorite Denver Bronco of all time. And we also would be remiss if we didn't talk about another guy. And if you guys have seen my streams every once in a while, when I had it in a different location, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about another guy. Now, obviously, I'm 36 years old, so I at least kind of grew up in some of the Tebow years and everything. But we would be remiss if we didn't talk about Demaryius Thomas either. Demaryius Thomas, maybe the second greatest wide receiver in Broncos history, or the best wide receiver in Broncos history, depending on who you talk to. And I think the one thing that maybe he has in this conversation versus Rod Smith was, or I guess depending on how you look at it, more impressive for Rod, was just, Rod was undrafted and Demaryius, was drafted. And I think what makes even his story so fun was there was so much that went wrong in the Josh McDaniels era. But one of the things that he did get right was draft Demaryius Thomas in that draft class with Tim Tebow. And then and then Demaryius Thomas became a legend after that Steelers game and everything. So it's so cool having these kind of discussions, because there's people that even if you read through those lists, like, oh man, I completely forgot about this guy. And one of the guys that I was surprised, even for like almost an honorable mention, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about Ryan Clady and what could have been with a guy like a Ryan Clady, even him literally coming on day one, as a draft pick and literally being the best tackle arguably in the entire NFL on day one.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Cam, let me ask you this real quick. Going back to the quarterbacks, or I mean, I understand that the best quarterbacks we had with John Elway and Peyton Manning and all that. My question, I guess, to either you or Glenn is this: if you had to start a team today with the Denver Broncos, not even from Denver, a new organization, with the players the Broncos have now, and you could pick one yesteryear player, who would that be?
It'd have to be John Elway. I mean, John Elway in this
over Peyton Manning.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And that's John Elway in played at a time where the passing game was completely different. I can't even imagine he would have been the original Pat Mahomes in this era. I mean, just the guy, the arm strength, the scramble, the you didn't want Elway to have the ball, just all the comebacks wins. I mean, I think that's a no-brainer, actually.
Yeah. I'm the same way. Look, and I should preface this in this saying that, like, Peyton Manning is my favorite over John Elway and him. Like, Manning's my favorite, for like between both of those guys. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But if you're looking strictly, at this particular current era and bringing a Broncos player into the current era, or former Bronco player into the current era,
who would it be?
It's got to be Elway, because, well, for one, the Broncos need a quarterback, but two.
Okay, but you have to have a second person. So you brought in Elway. So who currently would you want to have on this team along with John Elway?
So basically two former.
No. One current.
Oh, it's got to be PS2, right? I mean, like, is there any debate on that?
Yeah. Okay. It would be PS2 and it would be John Elway. But I don't need to add any more. I mean, Elway was Mahomes before Mahomes, and the one thing I would even add, with Elway is, like, even the current, status of how they even play defense now, like off coverage, a little bit much softer coverage, and, or unless you're Sauce Gardner and you're holding every single play and you're not get called. I mean, like,
do you have a cool nickname so everyone lets you get away?
But like they do play a rather, off coverage defense every once in a while. So he would be an absolute weapon in the NFL. And so I think that John Elway is the right answer. And I think what maybe could sway a little bit for a guy like a Peyton Manning is maybe the year that CJ Stroud had, because you just, the year CJ Stroud had as a cerebral, smart, young, rookie quarterback, I feel like is one where, maybe it's kind of balancing out a little bit, in terms of maybe you want to go with Peyton Manning, but we all know that Patrick Mahomes he's the face of the league for a reason. So, I mean, and we all know that.
Elway, you got Taylor Swift and you got.
And Elway was Mahomes before.
That's true.
Before Mahomes. So,
I got a question for you. What other question for you guys?
Long gone, Jeff. Now,
Tim Tebow.
Ahead,
Tim Tebow. Do you guys realize this? That Tim Tebow is the only drafted Broncos, quote, franchise quarterback, because that's what he was drafted for, be a franchise quarterback, to win a playoff game. Is that crazy? Craig Morton wasn't drafted. John Elway wasn't drafted. And I'm talking about starting quarterbacks. I mean, I know that Osweiler was part of the whole Manning thing, getting to Super Bowl 50. He wasn't the starting quarterback. Do you realize that's insane? One quarterback, Tim Tebow, who I absolutely adore. I love that guy.
So I got to throw somebody out there that we haven't talked about. And so in looking at the history of the Broncos, perhaps one of their greatest draft picks of all time never played for the team.
Huh?
Dick Butkus was drafted in the second round by the Denver Broncos in 1965.
Get out of here. 1965?
Yes.
And
So as
why,
an AFL player,
wouldn't he
so he
play
didn't,
with them?
because he went to the NFL and not the AFL. The merger had not occurred at that point.
Oh, I didn't know that if you were drafted by one league, you could go to another.
He was picked by both, and he went to the University of Illinois, so he could stay with the Bears and with the Broncos. Anything back in the mid '60s.
Can you imagine what the Broncos would have been with a Dick Butkus on the defense? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm going to have to go with, in 1983, the Broncos brought in a quarterback that really changed, that had a major impact on the history of the team. And it's not necessarily the guy that you're thinking about, because he was not drafted, as Bill just pointed out. But Gary Kubiak was drafted by the Broncos in the 8th round of 1983. He was John Elway's backup for many, many years.
All of the
impact,
years.
But what that draft choice did do is that draft pick did give him the relationship with the Broncos that then became a head coaching relationship, and then it became a Super Bowl head coaching relationship. And so I think Kubiak, even though his statistics, the guy was clutch as a backup quarterback. He was great. And he was the holder on Rich Carlos's kick in the drive game. Yeah.
Barely made that upright. Yeah.
But I for argument's sake, I got to throw Gary Kubiak into the mix as one of the best Broncos.
No, I think that's a good call, Glenn. I think it's a really good call. Gary Kubiak, in my opinion, and I'm just saying this, in my opinion, is the best backup quarterback in the history of the NFL. Seriously. If you look at what he had to endure for all those years behind Elway, never really was a dominant starter, but then became a great coach. And he took the coaching experience, elevated it into a Super Bowl head coach with the Denver Broncos. And I'll tell you what, man, I would trade everything. If somebody said, hey, we want Gary Kubiak to be drafted number 1 and be your number 1 quarterback, or what he ended up being, I'd say I'll take what he ended up being, because it gave the Denver Broncos Super Bowl 50. A fantastic backup. I would really love to have known what he could have been to be a starter, but how he ended up was phenomenal, fantastic. I wouldn't trade that for anything. Wouldn't trade it.
And the best part was, too, is that as a backup, he had there was no quarterback competition at all, because they had traded for Elway that same year.
Right.
So his role, as The Rock says, know your role, like his role was known. And it really gave him an opportunity to sit there on the sideline, soak it all in, and almost become a de facto quarterbacks coach, offensive coordinator. And he was able to hone his skills, which he then took to the college game at Texas A&M, and then obviously brought it back to the pro ranks. And that's the best, is when you can get a reliable guy that can work together with the starting quarterback and not have that guy not have the starter distracted by the backup. And that was never going to happen with Kubiak.
Well, go ahead, Glenn. I was going
to say, like, that's one of the reasons why I feel like maybe to an underrated point, that's one of the reasons why, like, a backup quarterback is such a very underrated big deal for teams, right? I mean, I believe Big E was actually referring to, like, the Nick Foles Super Bowl with Carson Wentz, right? I mean, like, Brock Osweiler for that 1 year, 2015, like, when you have a good quarterback that could be able to at least, continue that stability, it's a big deal. But I think what makes it so much sweeter is everything you guys talked about, is like when he's literally a player's coach. He is a player on the field, but he's a coach, just an extra coach on the field. I think it makes it so much smoother for you, even when you're the starting quarterback or even when you're yourself, because you're always learning, you're always soaking it up. You're a sponge on the field, and so I feel like, sometimes even as a backup quarterback, it gets lost at times, right? It kind of gets lost at times that people maybe, kind of forget a little bit about it. And I think that once you're that sponge and you're that guy that's soaking up all that information, I will say I'm kind of disappointed at times. Maybe we don't necessarily get as many backup quarterbacks that are coaches either in the NFL or, or whatnot, because of, how much that they really do have to soak in, even though they aren't starting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, good point. But I would have to say, having Elway, Kubiak as a backup, Mike Shanahan as a head coach, that was a perfect triangle, perfect trifecta, perfect. It couldn't have been any better, seriously. And then have Kubiak go to head coach.
Yeah,
yeah.
But also that time, if you think about it, is Dan Reeves was the Broncos coach when Elway came in, and they eventually did not see eye to eye. Probably because Dan Reeves was a run twice up the middle, and then Elway could do his thing on third down, and that was kind of the Reeves offense. But I imagine that Gary Kubiak also served as a nice buffer, sounding board. Just a guy that Elway could, maybe he could trust when he didn't trust his head coach. I mean, if you think about it, Reeves is a guy that Elway was in his prime, and Reeves wasted a number 1 draft choice on Tommy Maddox to light a fire under his ass when one wasn't really needed. This guy was a successful player, but he wanted to show him who was boss, and I mean that would never happen in this day and age. They'd never waste a pick like that. But if you look at the Broncos drafts in the late 80s, early 90s, my goodness, there was a lot of crappy players picked.
Do you think that when John Elway was GM and he selected Gary Kubiak to be the head coach, do you think that was his way of saying, hey, thanks so much for what you've done. I really believe in you. I think you can take us to that next level, which he did. Do you think that had part of it, or you just think it was a gut response?
I mean, I think that it's all of the above. I mean, I think that it would be kind of foolish to not bring a guy on that you don't trust, right? I mean, so I think that him having that familiarity and the trust, more importantly, I think was really big for him. And even for, as it went into the 2016 season, and even the 2016 season, they were 9-7 that year. They could have made the playoffs that year. They really could have. And and then obviously we know that Kubiak's health rolled into that season, and unfortunately he couldn't prolong. I guess that's probably the question, is what could have happened if he didn't have health problems. For Kubiak, if he doesn't have those health problems in 2016, you weren't talking about maybe the Broncos rotating, Broncos rotating through coaches, right? And so talk about a what if scenario, which it's funny, Glenn, I think you and I actually had even with Mike, had that show a couple of years ago, those what if scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
That was one I don't know if we ever even thought of.
No, we didn't actually. No,
what if Kubiak didn't have those health issues? Because if he doesn't have those health issues, you're talking about a little bit more of a stable organization at that point, because you're talking about a head coach that's going to be there for maybe a couple more years.
Think about it too, from Elway's standpoint as GM. At the time, the Broncos had the best offense in NFL history. Peyton Manning was buzzing. They had 5 guys with over 10 touchdowns in that season. They go to the Super Bowl, and it was a complete embarrassment from the first snap of the game to the last
over the head.
And so the Broncos pivoted completely away from, let's not make this completely about the offense. And they had those 3 big signings I think they were all on the same day, the Ward, that Akib and DeMarcus Ware. And he changed coaches. I mean, how often does a guy take his team to the Super Bowl with that kind of success and then lose his job? And he installed Gary Kubiak. And so that's, I think Bill, like Cam said, I think it's a little bit of all the above, but he knew he was a good coach, and he knew he could trust him, and it worked. And, like as long as we're talking about what ifs around that team, what if Brock Osweiler hadn't gotten a hair across his ass about not being relegated to second string after Peyton Manning came back and
against the Chargers
and
came back?
No, but what if he had stayed with the Broncos? So, I mean, he was a huge part of that Super Bowl season.
Sure it was. Absolutely.
And the Broncos getting to that spot.
No doubt about it. I mean, so let me ask you another question, hypothetical, as long as we're, talking about the what if. What if Kubiak, like Cam said, what if Kubiak's health would have stayed solid and he was coaching today? Would Russell Wilson have worked with Gary Kubiak's system?
Would he even been coaching at that point? Because I feel like he would have been. Because I feel like
I'm just saying if.
I don't know if he would have lasted that long. That's the thing. Like, I don't know if he would have lasted that long. I think he wanted to be a coach, for sure. I mean, I think he came back, right? He came back to the NFL after the Broncos, head coaching gig, after he took a few years off or something. I think he joined the Ravens, if I'm not mistaken. I think is who he joined. But I think it would have just been like he would have probably been a QB coach, offensive coordinator, or something. Like he would not have been a head coach by any means. But I feel like as the years and stuff would have gone on, I think at some point he would have retired to where the marriage between Russ, we still never would have seen it.
Okay. Well, so let me ask you this, hypothetically. Do you think if there ever was a situation where a Gary Kubiak and Russell Wilson marriage, do you think it would ever work? Give it any year. Do you think it would work with the way he wanted to run his offense?
Probably. I mean, see, I think a lot of it, I think Sean Payton's ego really has, played a big part in the relationship not working out. I mean, just from the get-go. I've always been a big Russell supporter, but even I'm seeing, like, with some of the, like being on the magazine covers and the posts and this and that, like, I like when I like that he's himself, but a little self-awareness and like kind of reading the room at times, he just keeps going, and it doesn't, I guess the criticism doesn't bother him, but from a career standpoint, like you would think that maybe his agent or his wife would say, dude, why don't you just lay low a little bit? And then, so you're not making the narrative, you don't want to give people another reason to talk crap about you. And
do you think he cares?
No, I don't.
I don't think he cares.
And that's the beauty. That's the beauty of his attitude. But from a career standpoint, with the fact that the last 2-3 years have not been fantastic for him, he's now on his third team in 3 years. Maybe you just, or 4 years, maybe you just kind of chill out a little bit, see how things work out.
Or, it's a bit harsh, but maybe you kind of realize maybe it's kind of you, right? I mean, maybe it is kind of you. If you're
common denominator.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds really harsh to say that, because I mean, Glenn knows this. I'm a big Russell Wilson fan, but it's like, if you are on your your third team in 4 years, it's probably worth maybe looking at the point of, man, is this kind of who I became, or do I need to change some things and kind of, realize, maybe am I too much of a celebrity versus, my, football player?
I mean, he's wearing a fur coat on the magazine cover. last week.
He's, in my opinion, I'm a step back away from being a fan. But in my opinion, it seems to me like he's trying to be a prima donna, like it's all about me. I even mentioned on my show Friday that he made comment that he's the reason why people like Patrick Mahomes and others have been predominant in the NFL because he's the first African American to like win a Super Bowl. I'm like, no, what about Doug Williams? Remember 19? I mean,
I know.
you know what I'm saying? So it just bothers me that he has this
God, I love Doug
attitude.
Williams.
It really bothers me. I mean, I really thought the guy would work out in Denver, but
I will say, and I know we're maybe going just a tad bit long. I do have a what if scenario in terms of the Broncos' best draft picks, and I know that Glenn mentioned about Gary Kubiak. I have one in terms of a possible what if, but also maybe a draft pick that resulted in the greatest cornerback of all time, and that being Clinton Portis. The Broncos drafted Clinton Portis, and he put together a very consistent year in and year out, and so much so, it resulted in us getting Champ Bailey. It gave us Champ Bailey. So, talk about a what if scenario even there, because like, what could have happened if Clinton Portis was still with the Broncos and Champ Bailey wasn't, with the Denver Broncos, but still stayed with the Washington
Redskins.
Redskins.
Go ahead and say it.
But I mean, like, you're talking about probably a win-win scenario even without the trade, because you're talking about Portis, who is, if things were progressing, Portis would very likely have been a top 3 running back of all time in Broncos history, and Champ Bailey still would have been one of the greatest cornerbacks of all time. So, and the reason why I say it is just because if you look at everything in the year that Portis was having, the years he was having, he was putting some ridiculous numbers up year in and year out, like 1,400 yards, 1,500 yards, like in back-to-back years. He was incredible.
So you're telling me, Cam, you'd rather have Clinton Portis instead of Champ Bailey?
No, I'm saying
that's what it sounded like to me.
I'm asking what if.
No, I think he was suggesting that Clinton Portis could be considered one of the best Broncos draft choices. I mean, because he was able to parlay. Okay. I mean, another one you could say is Chris Hinton in the 1983 draft. Yeah. Could be one of the best Broncos draft choices because he was shipped along with. Broncos got John Elway for Chris Hinton and Mark Herman and I think one other player. Right. So crazy
for John Elway. Yeah. Okay, Cam. I don't mean to step on you.
No.
Okay, so I understand what you're saying now. Okay.
I realize at times I may sound like an idiot, but I wasn't trying to sound like an idiot.
I didn't say that. I just thought you were saying you'd rather have Clinton Portis instead of Champ Bailey. I go, whoa.
Yeah.
So the last segment that we had planned for tonight was, with the draft coming next week, and we're only 6 days away from seeing what the new Broncos uniforms are going to look like. But the draft is one. Oh gosh, Bill. Bill's wearing like 3 different types of sport uniforms, and he's
I'm a Cubs fan.
Looks like.
It's the only C in Colorado. Well, Cubs are in Colorado, but it's the only C that I have that knows how to win. Avalanche haven't figured out how to win lately, but anyways, all right.
But so as of this moment, and Mike actually gave me his, so I'll tell his. As of this moment, what do you think the Broncos do in the first round? And Mike's prediction is that they will be trading up to the 9th spot, where a sliding J.J. McCarthy will be available, and as part of that trade to move up, Courtland Sutton will be included in that deal.
That's spicy. That is that's so. Wait, Glenn. Can I preface? Can I peel the onion. We're talking about Mike, right? The guy who recently last week was suggesting, possibly, or like even a month ago, like suggesting, oh, you know what? Let's take Nate Wiggins at corner, or
Sam Hartman,
or possibly like taking a quarterback at 12, or Jared Verse at 12. That same Mike is suggesting that the Broncos are trading up. JJ McCarthy. I just want to make sure I process this.
You've processed it correctly, sir. All right, so Cam, what happens?
You were gonna say it, Bill, though. Where do you think they go?
Go ahead.
Oh man, putting myself in the brain of Sean Payton is like one of the worst feelings in the world, because no one knows. I just feel like no one knows.
Weird scenario to be in, Cam.
Yeah, I just don't think no one really kind of knows what they want to do, because we said it so often. I feel like it's a competing personality still. I feel like Sean Payton wants to trade up. I feel like Sean Payton wants to trade up, and George Payton, maybe it seems like the logical situation is actually to agree with George Payton in this scenario and trade down and accumulate capital, and everything, something that they've not had the last couple of years. So. Oh man, it's hard, and so maybe the commonality. You know what? I will go with a bold prediction and a very hot, spicy prediction, in the sense that they will not have just one first-round draft pick; they will have two. So see, we got balloons. We even got balloons. I'm getting a celebration routine over here. We got balloons. So I will say they stay put at 12. I would say they stay put at 12. They take Brock Bowers at 12.
Hold on a second. Wait a minute. Stop it. You said you got 2 first round. We only have 1. How are you getting the second one?
Oh, he's getting there, Bill. Come on.
Well, I'm trying to help him.
I just said they stay put at 12, because that's the common, theme. Like, if you're not going to trade up and you're not going to trade down, the logical situation is you just stay put at 12. Well, they take Brock Bowers, and then they took Brock Bowers, and then as things are sliding down and they realize what the board is doing, they go get Sean Payton's guy at quarterback. They come back into the first round, and they get the 5th-year option and everything. I don't know. I'm not a draft capital, mathematician.
You're throwing it out there, Cam. I'm just saying, how's this going to happen?
They come back down into the first, and they take Bo Nix. With their first round pick. So you get Bo Nix and you get Brock Bowers and as your 2 first round picks.
Wow.
Bill loves the Bo Nix selection. Yeah. Bill, go ahead.
All right. Minnesota Vikings and the Atlanta Falcons have an issue with the NFL. NFL has already looked into Atlanta tampering with Minnesota. That means if they want to flip draft picks, Minnesota then goes to number 8. And Atlanta goes to 12. Okay. If Denver's going to move up to get 11, their guy.
11 Broncos are 12.
I mean, 11, I'm sorry. 11 and 8. So if that's the case, if Denver wants to get their guy, 8's not going to get it done. They're going to have to go to 4. If they go to 4, that means they have to put in a package of either Patrick Stan or Courtland Sutton. I don't want either one of them gone, period. So my thing is Denver stays pat at 12 and drafts, and I know this is not a popular answer, but drafts the best player available, period. I know, Cam, you
got to name a name.
I don't know who's going to be at 12. If Bo Nix falls, because I know JJ McCarthy's gone to first 3 or first 4. No doubt about it. I'm not a big Bo Nix fan. I know a lot of people are talking about him. I know a lot of people are saying that, he fits Sean Payton's system. He's quick release. He reads the defense as well. This, that, and the other thing. I get that. I'm just not a Bo Nix guy because I just don't think that he's gonna be the long-term guy or be the guy. And here's another thing. Do you guys realize that Sean Payton has never drafted a quarterback in the first round ever?
Yep.
Why would he do it? Why would he do it now?
You know why he didn't?
Okay.
He didn't need one. He didn't have to.
Yeah.
But he
I'm just gonna let this one sit here for a while.
Bo Nix is half as old as Bill already. Okay, how old is Bo Nix? Hang on. I'm seriously. How old is Bo Nix right now?
24, as far as he will be 24 by the season that starts.
Yeah.
He's less than half. I'm 65.
It's a joke.
I think,
yeah.
I thought it was legit, dude. I was trying to be legit. Okay, I'm only 45. How's that?
So I think the Broncos are going to trade back just a little bit, just to get a second round pick. And I don't know if 16 will cut it. I don't know if 18 or 19 will cut it. I think that the Raiders are going to take Michael Penix Jr. with the 13th pick. And I think they're going to have great success with him, or whoever chooses him. I think is going to do well. But I'm with Cam. I think Bo Nix is our guy. We get our quarterback in the first round. He's primed and ready for a professional career.
He's 35 years old, man. I mean, come on, man.
Have you watched his if you get a chance, Bill, and you do watch some YouTube stuff here and there, go watch a fair amount of the interviews that he's done with Chris Sims, Robert Griffin III.
No, I know.
And Chris Collinsworth. The dude is he's
legit. He is legit. I will give you that. He is legit. But he's 20, what, 26?
No, he's 24, 25. Man. Like, but honestly, like, part of a young, inexperienced quarterback or a guy that's played one season or played 8 games or whatever, like that is that is a little bit scary, I think we still got our first round quarterback. I think we get a 5-year deal. I think quarterbacks are playing way longer than they ever did in the past. So age isn't that big of a deal, except when you're talking about the type of experience that a guy that's been in college for, especially with the COVID extra years and things like that, I think that we're going to see some good success with them. Yeah. And I'm just worried about the Broncos spending so much to move up and still maybe not getting the guy that's going to be, they're not going to get to 3. I just don't see how that happened. I mean, are they going to get to 4? Will the Cardinals drop that far? I don't know.
Are either one of you scared about this draft or what the Broncos could or could not do?
No.
Yeah, I'm scared if they draft a cornerback at 12. I'll tell you that.
Cornerback.
Yeah, corner. A cornerback, yeah. But no, I shouldn't say scared. That's my worst case scenario. I don't want them taking a corner. But like again, to clarify for me, it's like, do I think it happens? No, because I just wanted to go with a little bit of a spicy route because I have no idea what they're gonna do. But I feel like I feel like the best way that the common medium for them is either they stand pat at 12, or they take their guy, or they trade back. If you were to ask me what I would do, I would just rather them. I would just rather them trade back and accumulate capital. Frankly, I agree with George Payton in this scenario. I want them to trade back and accumulate their capital, and then go take their quarterback. But I will say, I will throw out now that with this whole Courtland Sutton stuff that's transpired, we may want to circle wide receiver as a position as a trade down option. And so if you're going to be looking at a wide receiver possibly, and if the Bo Nix and Penix stuff is true in the second round, you actually might be fortunate enough to where you can probably get maybe an A.D. Mitchell, right? An A.D. Mitchell, there at the bottom half.
I want Ryan back.
And then, what is it? And then you can go get Bo Nix in the second round. But again, I just wanted to go with the spicy route. I also just feel like maybe Brock Bowers is, a strong consideration for that 12th overall selection if they stay put.
I agree.
Let me ask you another question. Okay. What draft pick, position wise, would you guys absolutely lose your mind if they chose?
Are you saying player?
No, position. For the Broncos are drafting 12. If they don't drop back or do whatever, they're drafting 12. What is the worst case scenario that that Sean Payton would pick that would absolutely go, what in heaven's name are you thinking? What would it be?
I already gave mine. Mine would be.
I'm with Cam on that, actually. And I know it's cornerback, defensive back, corner, because
not offensive lineman, not defensive lineman,
no, because we actually have a need at tackle. Bowles is under contract for one more year. We could draft a tackle and send Bowles packing, and perhaps there's where we get our second round pick. Okay. And maybe we package it up, and that's how Cam gets back into the tail end of the first round. I mean, the Patriots made their living trading out of the first round when they were either winning or going deep into the playoffs, and they would just always trade out. The problem with us is that one of the major players at the end there is our rival Chiefs, and they're never actually going to trade out of there. So
no,
yeah. Well, and I think that it's one of those situations where it's like if you
punter, there you go.
Yeah, go take what is it, Torrey Taylor from Iowa? Go take the punter from Iowa. But yeah, I think that's why it's so fascinating, because if they do stay put at 12, that's where it enters the territory of the conversation that all of us have had before, because it's like, because if you stay pat at 12, it actually is a far more enticing option to you to take other players, not corner, but just take some other players. And frankly, the best position that might actually be available to you there is offensive tackle. And the moment you take an offensive tackle or an offensive lineman, you have to entertain the Garrett Bowles idea and trading him, because when you draft a guy in the top 12 or a first round pick like that, and especially a class like this where some people are even suggesting that maybe even 12 offensive tackles in this class could be bona fide starters right away, right? So I think that, like, if you take a an Alu Fashanu from Penn State, you put him, you draft him, and you make him your left tackle, you gotta trade Bowles right away. Or you take a Byron Murphy. I feel like defensive line and the trenches isn't talked about enough. Like, the Illinois connection with Jim Leonard, Johnny Newton from Illinois. I mean, like, there's edge rusher. There's other positions, that I feel like maybe are certainly under consideration. Edge rusher and, so many other, positions that are even above corner, even wide receiver. Like, I actually think that for me, it's a much harder conversation if you just happen to luck out and you have a Dunze and Brock Bowers at your plate, which is a wide receiver and tight end. You're talking BPA at that point, and so I don't know who you would go there.
Well, here's a problem that I have. Think about this, okay? You've got, you've got your team, your system, whatever, and you come to the draft, okay? It comes to the draft, and you got the best player available, but do you take that player, even if you don't need him? That's the thing I'm warning about. If we're sitting at 12 and all the quarterbacks are gone that Sean Payton and George Payton target, do we then just take anybody? No. I mean, that to me doesn't seem logical. So then what do you do? I mean, we need I mean, Cushionberry's gone. We don't have a valid center. We obviously our quarterback wouldn't be there because they're gone. So then what do you do? Do you run with Jared Stidham? Obviously, looks like so.
I mean, well, it depends on. It's always open to interpretation regarding quarterback, because frankly, we're talking about Jarrett Stidham. I mean, he won his first NFL game last year. You know,
yeah.
and
And
so
lost one.
and so I think that if you look at it from the specifically this, you know, this NFL draft, a guy like a Spencer Rattler, maybe even a Michael Pratt, could easily just come in and possibly be much better than Jarrett than Stidham, and he actually ends up starting. I mean, again, like I think that like that's what made what the Washington Redskins did with RG3 and Kirk Cousins such a interesting scenario, because they took RG3 first overall, and then they come back in like the third round, the Brock Osweiler draft, by the way, and they go out and they take Kirk Cousins, and Kirk Cousins ends up being the prize, you know, for them, and you know, and so I think that, you know, it makes it fascinating. So you can find those Kirk Cousins, those Dak Prescotts in these classes. It's just you got to develop them, and frankly, if you're being honest, like if you give Sean Payton a guy like a Spencer Rattler, you give a guy like a Michael Pratt to him, he will develop him. You know, you just hope that he can be into a developmental starter.
Good point.
Anyway, we could talk all night, especially, you know, like it's funny, like the doldrums of the off season, yet here we are almost an hour and a half into the show, but
it's never doldrums, Glenn. It's just, there's always something to talk about.
But Bill, I gotta thank you for hopping in and joining us on short notice.
Sorry for sporting my Cubs hat, but hey, they're on.
That's all right. Team. That's all right. And we are counting you. You know, we're holding you to take Chris Bryant back. And
I would love to have Chris Bryant back.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I got it. In fact, I got a Chris Bryant Cubs jersey.
Yeah, because he was good back then. He could actually hit the ball and not be injured, every 4 seconds. But anyway, got to thank
because he was a Cubs player. Oh, just sorry.
Got to thank everybody in the chat. You know, you guys have made it so fun. Things have been hopping these last few weeks. You know, we talk about how fun the pod could even be, how much more fun, because it's great now. We're enjoying it, but like if the Broncos can turn this around and we really have some positivity to talk about, you know, it's gonna be spectacular. But I'll throw it to each of you guys before we wrap up. Cam, you've got your show this week, but a little bit of a change in timing. You want to go over that?
I do. We are actually going to possibly not be doing a show on Wednesday. We might. It's a bit in limbo, so we might do a two shows of mainly Broncos, one tomorrow and one on Thursday. But the reason why we might actually do one on Thursday is because, well, what better person to talk about the current state of the Denver Broncos a week before the NFL draft than legendary reporter and friend of the 5280 podcast, Mike Kliss. He's going to be on mainly Broncos, and he's going to we're going to obviously talk about some NFL draft and possibly much more regarding the Broncos and the state of the Denver Broncos. So it's definitely fitting to have that conversation, and it's probably going to be a worthwhile listen to for a lot of people. So if you are listening to either the 5280 podcast and or even if you are someone who does another Broncos podcast, it's going to be a really, I feel like, an informal interview and sit down with him, because we're talking Thursday. We're talking truly a week before the draft. And so possibly when the things that he says, it might actually be noteworthy, a week before heading into the draft in terms of like in beginning of April or in May.
Awesome, man.
So Bill, do you have your topic picked for Broncos breakdown on Friday night, or are you basically keeping your options open, figuring something happen in the meantime?
First and foremost, Cam, thanks a lot. I have no Mike Kliss on my show, so I'm done. It's all good. I'm just don't tune into my show. No, seriously, I get my topics together throughout the week. I choreograph them and put them into my own words on Thursday. I cut up the papers. I make little bullet points and things like that. Get that all ready on Thursday afternoon, early evening. Go over it on Friday after I get back from working at the golf course. It's around 12, and I kind of go through that and get everything focused. And yeah, I'm ready to go. I don't have my clips, but if you guys are interested in just hearing this crazy guy, then hey, tune in Friday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 5, 6, 7, and 8. I'd love to have you be on in the chat. Otherwise, you can go see that guy on Thursday and not even listen to me on Friday. But I would love to have you. Anyway,
well, thanks for taking us behind the scenes, Bill, because quite honestly, I'm really surprised you spend that much time preparing based on the content of the show. But anyway, no, I kid.
Wow! I just got punked by Glenn. I love it, Glenn. Nice punk, dude. Nice punk.
Anyway,
anybody out there? Don't listen to what he said the last 30 seconds. Regarding
no, absolutely not.
Cam's not saying anything.
Okay.
Cam,
listen to this. Like we tease Bill,
Yeah,
but he carries a show on his own and does it well, and it's a hugely popular show on the network. So I give you kudos.
appreciate that. I'm just one crazy 65-year-old Bronco fanatic that just loses his mind and does my own show. So
There you go.
Well,
it's like watching Britney Spears' Instagram.
Well, I was gonna say you guys also are doing the neighborhood with the playoffs now. Going to be starting here soon.
oh god, the Avalanche are pissing me off.
So
How do you blow 3-0 lead starting the third period to the Vegas Gorgiev? Oh, that's a whole other story. What we go up for
All
now.
right. All right, we got to sign off here, but thank you so much to everybody for popping in. It's been great. Ray, what can I say? Anyway,
exactly, Ray.
Tune in to the other shows on the MHRT network. We've got shows virtually every day of the week, especially now with the neighborhood kicking in. So please take a look. We'd love your support on all the different platforms. Even on TikTok, we're crawling up there, creeping towards 1,000, where we'll be able to broadcast live on TikTok as well as all these other platforms that we're doing. So thank you so much. Anyway, go Broncos and have a wonderful night.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Tempo's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way